With Suiryu showing up more in the current manga events of One Punch Man, it's time to revive the fanbase's commonly asked question of who's got more pep in their step around the events of Season 2. 5-time Superfight champion Suiryu or hero hunter Garou before Phoenix Man flew him off to the luxurious underground monster hotel. However, rather than ask the question of Suiryu versus Garou within this specific time period for the 100th time, I thought we'd add an interesting little twist and instead see if Suiryu could hunt Garou's targets as effectively as he did. Yes, what if Suiryu was a little more spiteful than the one we know, and instead of using his martial arts to prove why heroism is a waste of time in tournaments, what if he decided to make his point by going to find some hero targets out in the streets? That's right, it's time to forget about hero hunter Garou for a moment and instead put all eyes upon hero hunter Suiryu. So, can Season 2 Suiryu deal with Season 2 Garou's problems? We'll see where he does well, where he trips up, and anything else that comes to mind. Alright. So, spill the beans. How good is Suiryu? Well, the funny thing about Suiryu is he's one of the most mysterious characters to get a specific scale for in One Punch Man. And it's even funnier because the main characters used for his scaling reference also happen to be some of the most mysterious characters to scale, that being Chose, Bakuzan, and Goketsu. So while many of us know the general place of where Suiryu is within the power rankings, inside of that general place, there's a lot of grey area once you start getting specific. What we do know is that he's within S-class levels of power by not only being able to defeat demon level monsters, but survive numerous attacks from dragon level monsters too. Like many demon level foes, Suiryu is able to defeat A-class heroes in single strikes even when not putting his maximum power into those strikes, which is something both S-class heroes and demon level monsters are evidently capable of. On the note of demon level threats, Suiryu defeated Chose after deflecting the most powerful attack it could muster, and this was a monsterification which Goketsu deemed to be a pretty good turnout, which should be some worthwhile praise from a no-nonsense cadre. Additionally, after being defeated by Goketsu, Suiryu withstood and survived many strikes from a Bakuzan who Goketsu labeled to be dragon level. And while I'd personally have Monster Bakuzan as a low dragon, these are still strikes from a dragon level monster nonetheless, which Suiryu was able to survive and stay conscious from after already having fought Chose and Goketsu beforehand. I won't make much note of Suiryu surviving Goketsu's attacks because those attacks were so clearly beneath any real effort from him that they're not worth mentioning, whereas Bakuzan was legitimately putting some real oomph and spite into his punishment. This very same weakened Suiryu was also able to break one of Bakuzan's toes while being heavily compromised, and not only that, but he did it from a position which barely gave him any leverage, which honestly makes it quite impressive at this level of tiering. Skill wise, Suiryu is among the top fighters in the verse as a master of the Void Fist. This art maximizes power amid a steady combat flow which allows constant attacks while maintaining and building both strength and speed. His Void Fist has secured him several championships within a series known for its cracked martial arts, and his fighting ability is not only proven by in-series accolades, but through actual fights too. Granted, his fighting skills are not within the tier of Bang or Bomb, but that wouldn't stop him from being able to style on the majority of characters when technical skill is the sole factor without any stat differences to account for. Based on all this, I think it's a fair take to have Suiryu somewhere around mid-demon to high demon, primarily by the speed and power shown against Chose, along with the ability to harm a dragon level monster even while severely compromised. This can also perhaps go a little higher if he's given a favorable matchup, since there's some relativity between high demon and low dragon when the conditions are right for it. Another statement I find interesting is that Goketsu suggested that Suiryu could even become as strong as a cadre if he were to monsterize, which is a thought that goes unnoticed by a lot of fans. It's not particularly anything concrete, but it does add to the idea that Suiryu is still impressive to the eyes of a strong dragon level monster who seems to understand the scales of power within the hierarchy he operates. Let's kick things off in Hero Association HQ. This is where Garou confronted 3 A-class heroes who were standing in as security while Sitch addressed a room full of criminals. Needless to say, this crowded assortment of society's finest started getting rowdy pretty soon, which led to the hero hunter showing his skills against Heavy Tank Loincloth, Magic Man, and Blue Fire. These are 3 respected A-class heroes who excel in their own fields, but to their disadvantage here, they are still A-class. Suiryu has enough striking power to defeat any of these 3 heroes within 1 or 2 hits, along with the speed to evade any techniques they may try to do, with Suiryu's power being shown to even defeat demon level threats, which are above the capabilities of any single A-class hero, save for very few exceptions. While it can be argued that he'd need to hit them with a little harder of a move than he did for Snek or Max, it'd still be something well within his merit to do so. Heavy Tank would be outskilled completely, Magic Man doesn't have any worthwhile tricks to stifle Suiryu, Blue Blue Fire's likely going to keep his arm this time around since Suiryu's not quite as spiteful as Garou, but he's also going to be knocked out clean given we've already seen Suiryu deflect a cloud-splitting energy blast, so some A-class flames aren't going to stop him. Very simple victory for Suiryu here. Immediately after, we've got the roomful of goons left to deal with, the very same who Garou dealt with immediately after the 3 heroes. Naturally, none of these thugs can hold a candle to Suiryu, so as you can imagine, he'd turn that entire room into something out of Dynasty Warriors, where it's another total victory for Suiryu's Void Fist. This would mean that Suiryu has enacted his hero hunt arc and taken out 3 A-class heroes and dozens of small-time crooks. Sometime after this, if we're following the vein of Garou's pathway, this should bring Suiryu to an alleyway confrontation with Tanktop Vegetarian, who is another A-class hero. The Tanktop did not save him against Garou, and unfortunately, the Tanktop fails again, since Suiryu would also completely dominate Vegetarian in what should be a one-shot. Remember kids, if you're a mediocre hero, just stay away from alleyways at night. It's going to save you a lot of trouble. This brings us to the first interesting test of Suiryu's hero hunt, Tanktop Master. Now, we know the S-class hero isn't the only opposition here. We have some Tanktoppers, Moomin Rider, and afterward, Charanko. However, they're all essentially non-factors here, so we'll touch on them in a moment. Now, at face value, many of you will just assume that since Garou put the work on Tanktop Master once he sat forward in his gamer chair, that Suiryu will clean house very easily too. It's not quite so simple though. The most significant amount of damage to take place within that fight was when Garou, utilizing the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist, redirected Tanktop Master's serious punch after he decided to stop holding back so much against a human. This means that Tanktop Master, with all of his Herculean strength, took the force from one of his strongest punches at 2 times the power. It was this incredible amount of his own strength which essentially had Tanktop Master completely rocked and flipped the script on the entire battle, with everything Garou added after being the final touches to his victory. What this means is that while Suiryu can certainly hit hard, unlike Garou, he has no measure to deflect Tanktop Master's own power back at him, which instead takes away his ability to deal a massive amount of damage in one single blow. This doesn't mean that Suiryu cannot win, however. Instead, whereas Garou's victory was won through an astonishing single blow with some finalizing touches, Suiryu's will likely be a longer battle where he'll need to inflict a longer pattern of damage upon the S-class hero until the Void Fist's compounding damage eventually sits Master down to where he can no longer continue. The question to ask is, will Suiryu be able to outlast Tanktop Master's strength and whittle him down? To which I believe the answer will be yes. Master is vastly underskilled in hand-to-hand combat when compared to Suiryu, and instead has a skill set more suited to battling brutish monsters in tests of strength. Like Garou, Suiryu has techniques designed for specifically felling human opponents by way of the Void Fist being a human martial art designed to contend with other arts and their practitioners. Judging by Suiryu's speed demonstration against Chose, it's not out of the ordinary to say he's on par or likely even faster than Tanktop Master in direct hand-to-hand combat. Tanktop Master is briefly seen with dragons such as Fura Ugly and Gums, but neither of those encounters suggested he was any faster than what Suiryu has shown. On Gums, however, he showed enough strength to resist the bite force of a dragon level cadre whose entire thing revolves around biting, which showcases incredible levels of lifting strength for Tanktop Master outside of his more commonly shown lifting feats. Speed-wise though, not enough dragon-related stuff to separate him ahead from Suiryu. You could argue that since Tanktop Master landed hits on Garou in the beginning of their fight, then he could do the same to Suiryu, but that's not quite how it seemed. Garou was initially holding back to begin with to feel Tanktop Master out, and even objected to using the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist until he felt the need to. Once he engaged with his techniques, Tanktop Master had no answer. Suiryu, however, has no qualms about using the Void Fist, which is his style of martial arts to how Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist is for Garou, meaning he won't be getting tagged by hits which shouldn't ordinarily get through his martial art. Tanktop Master certainly has more physical strength, yet we've seen in One Punch Man countless times that physical strength is countered by martial arts mastery unless the overall stat gap is too severe, and in this case, Tanktop Master is not far enough above Suiryu to neg everything he's doing, so the most likely scenario is Master gets completely outskilled and outpaced until eventually succumbing to the build-up of Suiryu's precise techniques. I think there's definitely a case to be made that Tanktop Master may get some offense in, such as if he surprises Suiryu with his ground pound into Tanktop tackle combo, yet given Tanktop Master's initial holding back against human opponents, anything he does land initially wouldn't take Suiryu out immediately, and instead just wisens Suiryu up into realizing it's best for him to counter, parry, and evade any further blows. those. What you also have to remember, and what some people misunderstand, is that just because a martial arts specialty may not be in defense or deflection, it doesn't mean they're not still masters of defense. A common misconception in this matchup is that Suiryu will have trouble defending Tanktop Master's strikes since his art is more aggressive than Garou's. This is wrong though, because being a martial arts master means you have strong control over all aspects of fighting, with the specialty of your art being the focus, not the only thing to rely on. Suiryu may have a more attack orientated art than Garou, but his defensive skills in combat are still head and shoulders above most characters within the series, just not in the same way as someone like Garou or Bang. Sure, he cannot deflect attacks back at opponents like Bang's art, but he's still capable of parrying and evading a champion level boxer and professional underground fighters at the same time from two different angles without even moving from the spot where he's standing. Two fighters, by the way, who have more reason to be higher skilled fist fighters than Tanktop Master. Evading, parrying and countering the skill level of Tanktop Master will not be the challenge for Suiryu here. It will be outlasting and settling down Tanktop Master for good while not getting caught up in his brute strength, which he should have both the technique and physical ability to do. With Suiryu having more chance to win than lose, it's fair to say that he should overcome Tanktop Master, and no one else present will become involved until it's too late like in the story, or offer much issue to Hero Hunter Suiryu, so the Tanktopper army, Moomin Rider and Charanko all share the same hospital bill after this encounter. Hyotokko, Studless and Red Nose hear about the Hero Hunter soon after, and thankfully for everyone else in this video, Red Nose is sure he knows how to beat martial artists. Well, maybe not. Another 3 in the bag for Suiryu. Up next is Golden Ball and Spring Mustachio. Now, we know around this point in time, neither of them can defeat most demon level monsters, maybe not any without heavy speculation. Due to this, it's fairly straightforward that Suiryu would be capable of doing to them everything that Garou did. Golden Ball may even be one shot before Spring Mustachio arrives to make things more simpler. It all depends on if Suiryu feels like being one kick man or not. He has the reflexes to not be troubled by any of those projectiles, and I'm sure he'd find a less self-damaging way to deal with Tomboy. Either way, he strongly outstats both of these guys, and whether it's individually or both at the same time, this should not be a problem for Suiryu. So far, so good for Hero Hunter Suiryu, who is following Garou's path very well right now. It's probably a good time to mention Saitama within this video. Now, we already know what Saitama versus Suiryu looks like from the canon events, and it's a Suiryu victory. I was gonna say, only kidding, but it's actually true. He did beat Saitama via disqualification. Tournament technicality aside though, we obviously know how it goes. But out of fairness for Garou taking the Vegeta chop, we'll have Suiryu take one to wear him down a little for the following fights which take place the next day, thus giving Suiryu some shut-eye. Which then brings us to Metal Bat. Very interesting. I went into quite a lot of depth regarding Suiryu's martial arts supremacy over Tanktop Master in his section, primarily so I didn't need to retread it here. Everything I said regarding Suiryu being a far more technical fighter than Tanktop Master is applied here. The only difference being instead of punches, slams and grapples to work around, it's Metal Bat's Metal Bat. Okay, so Suiryu happens across Metal Bat after he's been tossed aside by Sentichoro like a controller after a few bad Call of Duty matches. The kicker here is that within the canon events, Garou fought Metal Bat long enough to survive until the fight gets postponed. So to keep within events, the same will be asked of Suiryu here. Suiryu does not need to beat Metal Bat to succeed here. He just needs to last long enough until Zenko arrives to protest the fight to match Garou's path. So, can Suiryu survive? Metal Bat is partially pumped up around this period after his fight at the sushi place, then after his tussle with Sentichoro, so Suiryu's going to need to play ball hard and fast from the get-go. Like Garou, Suiryu is an absolute skill mismatch for Metal Bat, but Bat's rising strength, speed and marauding endurance is going to cross a fatal line for Suiryu sooner or later to where his skills will no longer pay the bills. What I'm telling you is if this fight has no time limit, Metal Bat will eventually power up to a degree where his speed and power will allow him to land a swing which will have you pronouncing Suiryu's name as Suiryu. And yet, despite this, Suiryu can still succeed in his Hero Hunter cosplay as long as he sticks it out long enough. We know that between Metal Bat's base level to the amount of pump up he has against Garou suggests he's comfortably above most demon levels for defeating Senior Centipede, surviving Sentichoro's attacks, and enduring Garou. Not to mention the audiobook has him surviving for 3 minutes against Dragon level Carnage Kabuto in a simulation which couldn't even account for his fighting spirit elevation. All this suggests that the Metal Bat who encounters Suiryu should be somewhere within mid-demon to low dragon level, depending on your interpretation, which essentially means a very tough time for Suiryu if he gets clocked. Even so, Suiryu should be able to keep up with him in terms of speed, since when it comes to high demons and low dragons, a lot of their performances can can actually be somewhat relative when given the right circumstances and matchups, and I feel this is one of them. With Suiryu being far more skilled than Metal Bat, he should be able to dance and sway around all of Metal Bat's strikes the way Garou did, albeit with his own style rather than Garou's. Any hits he gives to Metal Bat will be felt, but nothing Suiryu can land will stop Metal Bat as long as his fighting spirit persists. If Suiryu was exactly the same person, but with a lower skill level or a more brutish style of fighting, I'd say he wouldn't be slick enough to survive this current gauge of Metal Bat, since he'd likely get tagged in a reckless trade or just not have enough proficiency to keep away from the big swinging bat. However, since he is the Superfight winner extraordinaire and has canonically been shown to have a sea of talent where he can even make fellow professional fighters look genuinely stupid, Suiryu should be able to survive long enough for Zenko to arrive, even if just barely. It will get close, and Suiryu may even get grazed or partially knocked toward the end when Metal Bat keeps ramping up, though I think their similar stats but vastly different skill levels will keep Suiryu conscious for long enough in what would be a very close encounter, giving him the successful showing against Metal Bat needed to continue his hero hunting run. Again though, for what it's worth, if you remove Zenko entirely and let it play out uninterrupted, Metal Bat's going to get him sooner or later and take the win. But for this instance, where we follow the story layout, Suiryu lasts until Zenko arrives, just like Garou. Interestingly enough, this next one doesn't require a win either. What it does require, however, is the ability to know when you are beat and to accept that realization. Yes, it's Watchdog Man. Like Garou, Suiryu does not have a chance at landing this plane. Garou managed to extend his hero hunt by understanding when it's time to call it quits, and Suiryu needs to be able to pick up on the same. That way, we can assume Watchdog Man will let him run off, as he did Garou, to where he's no longer Q-City's problem. As we've seen from One Punch Man's true events, Suiryu is no stranger to getting out of dodge, such as when he tried to leave after realizing Goketsu was too powerful for him to handle. So naturally, Suiryu's going to bolt after Watchdog Man starts to show why he's the guard dog of the century. This one is an L for Suiryu like it was for Garou. Watchdog Man is simply too much for either of them at this point in the story, so the good boy runs him out of town to where Suiryu finds King for his next target to try and regain some of that pride back. To keep on track with Garou's woes at the time, we'll say this is where Suiryu takes his second Saitama knock, being kicked through the wall after already being injured by Watchdog Man, to put our substitute hero hunter in rough condition for his next test. That being the group of hero hunters who just found Suiryu out in the woods. Gun, Shooter, Glasses, Wildhorn, Chain and Toad, Stinger, Smile Man, and Death Gatling. So far, Suiryu has managed to get through all the trials Garou has, although he's had a tougher time of it at Tanktop Master and Metal Bat, so performance-wise, he's behind Garou, but on technicality, he's done everything Garou has. Now, for a healthy Suiryu, this fight isn't all that challenging, but that's not the case here, courtesy of the previous challenges mixed in with Saitama's consciousness snatching kick, so Suiryu's in a bit of a bind the same way Garou was. The state Garou was in didn't allow him to simply speed blitz everyone and call it a day without going through some trouble, so given Garou should be just that bit better than Suiryu, it's reasonable to assume in the same condition, Suiryu won't be able to just zap through everyone with a buy one get 7 free one shot. Suiryu still has enough power to beat each of these guys in 1 or 2 hits however, so it's just his weariness making an immediate speed blitz unlikely. The main points are whether or not Suiryu has the durability to withstand any attacks which strike him, to which we know he has via his battle with Chose, where even a demon level monster's horns were repelled by his pecs rather impressively at point blank range. Suiryu will still be at risk from the hero's attacks, as we know durability in One Punch Man can be quite dynamic, but this is a good indicator that he can afford to take a few shots like Garou did. Secondly, given Suiryu will still have his power despite being slower than usual, this means he has enough strength in his attacks to take out each individual opponent when given the chance. This answers the question on whether he can capitalize on his opportunities. Third, Suiryu, as a more attack orientated fighter than Garou, will open up better avenues of attack and pressure upon these heroes who will struggle to handle his creative and momentum utilizing fighting style. The Void Fist excels in achieving and maintaining an attack flow, which could see a better showing of success against multiple weaker opponents, unlike Garou's Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist, which has a style more suited to inviting pressure. As we saw in the real battle, once one of the heroes goes down, their game plan starts to unravel, which is where Suiryu will have his way, since even a weakened and tired Suiryu is firmly above each of the heroes in this ragtag group. Their tactics may land them the odd hit here and there in the beginning, but Suiryu is capable of decimating the battlefield and even creating environmental destruction to upset the balance of their approach. I'd chalk this up to a middling difficulty battle battle because of his prior condition, and after it's said and done, he's essentially going to have not much left in the tank now that the entirety of everything has caught up to him by this point. And after all that, this is where post Superfight Genos arrives, sparkling clean and ready to squash a hero hunter. This, for me, is where we hit the wall. Garou managed to survive long enough to hold out for his contest against Bang, despite being mostly overwhelmed by Genos. However, the difference between Season 2 Garou and Season 2 Suiryu is that when limits are concretely reached, Garou pushes through them with a fire in his stomach and a rage in his heart. Suiryu doesn't have that wrath or level of grit required to break free from the jaws of defeat the way Garou does in situations which should have been the end of him, and that's going to stop him here. Given Genos' upgraded speed and power by this point in time, coupled with his very direct approach, I don't see a weakened and tired Suiryu being able to stand for long against a Genos capable of overpowering Garou in the same situation and dealing significant damage upon Sente Churro after. Also the same Genos who is an improved version of those who even bested the likes of G4, Face Ripper, Awakened Cockroach, and more. At this level of speed, strength, and firepower, being a better fighter is not going to cut it when you're not in top form, and added to that, Genos is no slouch either. He's traded hands with Sonic and Garou around this point of the series, so martial arts aren't something which will dominate him so easily since he's very capable himself, not to the level of Suiryu or Garou, but still thorough enough to find ways to land his own attacks. This is where I'll definitively say Hero Hunter Suiryu would be stopped completely, and it's by Genos after the grouped hero attack, and before Bang could arrive to take care of a rogue martial artist on the prowl. Genos will finish what everyone else has started and not allow Suiryu to get away no matter how hard he tries, meaning the hero hunter is locked up by the day's end. Overall, Suiryu managed to get a lot of the same outcomes Garou did. However, in the closer instances, Garou's performances were better and more efficient. Still, a very respectable showing for hero hunter Suiryu, proving that it's very fair for all the comparisons he's had to hero hunter Garou. To touch quickly on Bang, fresh or not, Suiryu would lose that fight, and it'd look a lot like Garou versus Bang after the Genos fight. Suiryu is a phenomenal fighter, there's no doubt, but Bang is in a league above, and Suiryu would quickly learn that his Void Fist still has a ways to go against the best of the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist. So there you have it, how Suiryu would do against the same challenges Garou faced in the role of a hero hunter, and how far he'd likely get before it all caught up to him. Like the video and let me know what you think in the comments below.